Good evening. A woman from Hampshire who was infected with hepatitis C during a blood transfusion has been describing the catastrophic impact it's had on her health.
Jackie Britton was given blood after complications giving birth in 1983, but only discovered she'd been infected in 2011.
She's one of many who has given evidence at the infected blood inquiry, which until now has focused on patients with haemophilia. Jackie says people like her must not be forgotten. Here's Rachel Hepworth.
There's always silver linings, and that's what you've got to look for. Some days
Jackie Britton is a positive person, but 40 years of ill health have taken their toll. She was given a blood transfusion in 1983 after the birth of her eldest daughter. It saved her life, but she had no way of knowing the blood was contaminated with hepatitis C. Years of illness were finally diagnosed in 2011, but the damage had already been done.
The Hep C was nearly 30 years in my body, causing havoc with my liver. Nothing's going to make you well again. I've got my funeral paid for. I've written things to be said at my funeral. It's a really dark place.
Sadly, Jackie's is not an isolated story. The infected blood inquiry in London has been running since 2019 and has heard from scores of patients whose lives have been blighted by the scandal. For years, campaigners have fought for the victims of what's been described as the biggest treatment disaster in the history of the NHS. Thousands have died from HIV and hepatitis after being given cheap imported blood products in the 1970s and 80s. Many victims were haemophiliacs, including more than 100 children at the specialist Trelaw School near Alton. Until now, the inquiry has focused on their treatment, but Jackie says others like her mustn't be forgotten.
Their losses have been immense. But we as individuals had transfusions in individual hospitals. We've never had that network. It's only since the inquiry that we've started meeting other people in the same boat. There'll be thousands probably that have died without even the knowledge that they were infected. I'm going to my grave kicking and screaming. Anybody that will listen.
You have to remember that these are people who are infected and so are suffering. They've got ill health and maybe psychological impact, or their loved ones who are having to and have had to carry on the fight because their loved one has passed away.
The inquiry still has many months to run. A compensation framework is being looked at, but Jackie is worried that her daughter, who she cares for full-time, would get nothing if she were to die under the current scheme. Still, she tries to be positive.
We're the lucky ones, we're still here talking about it. We've got to keep on speaking out for those that have lost their voices too early.
Rachel Hepworth, ITV News.